Welcome to God Knows Where. I'm Brett Harris. Forgive me if I sound a little froggy this week. I'm getting over a little sinus infection, but we are back this week reflecting on some of the stories and rivers that shape our tradition in this new series I've started calling Live Streams. From the rivers flowing out of Eden and the Nile where Moses was found to the crossings and healings and transformations that happen in other rivers, we're looking at how our tradition has been shaped by the flowing, living water all around us, by both the boundaries they provide and the ones God breaks within them. Today, we're looking at the second story of a river we come to in the book of Genesis. And at first glance, it doesn't look like much of a story at all, but I think there's a lot beneath the surface. Thanks to everyone who continues to support the show as we trust that God knows where this whole thing is going. You can join them today at the link in the show notes and know that I am grateful to all of you who support this show financially. And I'm really surprised, actually, that I got no messages from anyone last week about the band whose song was the inspiration for last week's title. So you've still got a chance to make sure that you can get a little gift from God Knows Where if you get it right. Just send me a message with the band that inspired last week's episode, the first in this series, Live Streams. Let me know what you think it is, and maybe you'll just have a little gift coming your way. Thanks for listening, y'all. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, Map Quest. A reading from Genesis 15. Then the Lord said to Abram, "Have no doubt that your descendants will live as immigrants in a land that isn't their own, where they will be oppressed slaves for 400 years. But after I punish the nation they serve, they will leave it with great wealth. As for you, you will join your ancestors in peace and be buried after a good long life. The fourth generation will return here, since the Amorites' wrongdoing won't have reached its peak until then." After the sun had set and darkness had deepened, a smoking vessel with a fiery flame passed between the split-open animals. That day, the Lord cut a covenant with Abram. "To your descendants I give this land, from Egypt's river to the great Euphrates." The first mention of rivers after the description of those 4 rivers running out of Eden doesn't come from the stories of Cain or Abel or even Noah and the flood. All the water that flooded the earth came from rain. But the first time we hear anything more about rivers after being told about the 4 that flowed out of the garden in Eden is when God makes this covenant with Abram, a promise that because of his faithfulness and trust, God will provide him not only with descendants despite his age, but also with land bounded by 2 rivers. The river in Egypt, which it seems safe to assume is the Nile, and the Euphrates. This feels like a throwaway line, a given, just a fact about where Canaan was, so readers can place it in their minds. And in some ways it is. This land God promises to Abram and his descendants lies within the Fertile Crescent, that lush, historic agricultural region that stretches from the Nile Delta to the Euphrates in current-day Iraq. It encompasses the land that Abram's descendants will enter after wandering in the wilderness, and that numerous judges and kings will rule over in the books of the Hebrew Bible that follow Genesis, and that powerful nations and armies will battle over and barter with and barter for in order to hold on to and sometimes expand their empires. This land doesn't expand beyond these rivers. It's bounded by them. The land Abram is promised is finite. Or is it? If there's one thing we know about rivers, it's that they aren't static or stagnant. They are moving, living water moving from one place to another, from a source to a destination, but that's not the only way they move. Their courses change too. One of my favorite maps is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers map of the lower Mississippi River over hundreds, if not thousands of years. This map charts more than 24 courses the Mississippi has taken over the years, and it shows in wild color how this river has changed the land around it, and even highlights places where the land has been on both the western and eastern sides of the river. It's a beautiful map that shows that while rivers do create boundaries, those lines are drawn in mud, not stone. So this land Abram was promised was not a fixed acreage and not something to squabble over as the Nile and Euphrates did, just like the Mississippi. God didn't provide Abram with a survey of the land, demarcating his family's land to be passed down to each generation, in part because God's gift to Abram wasn't the amount of land he received, it was its potential. If we know another thing about rivers, it's not just that they aren't still water, it's that all that movement and shifting courses and churning up dirt and silt and minerals makes incredibly fertile soil. Lands by rivers have always been sought after for this very reason. There's not a major city or civilization on our planet that hasn't prospered and grown thanks to the ability lying within that soil near a river's banks. And in a part of the world known for its fair share of arid, dry, even desert climates, arable, harvestable land was truly a blessing and one that could mean the difference between life and death, between wealth and poverty, or hunger and plenty. And all Abram did to receive this blessing was trust that God would provide. If he could trust God, follow God's lead, and trust that this land between these two powerful rivers, churning up rich, loamy soil, could provide him and all his children and theirs and theirs with all they ever needed, then he'd never go without. And he did. Abram trusted. This man with no children, no prospects of an heir, nothing but what he had carried with him, his wife Sarai and the others in his care, he trusted that God would provide. And God did. What more example do we need that all we need to do is trust that this world God has provided for us has enough for all of us, if we'll care for it, than this story? There's one more thing I want to say about these rivers and this land promised to Abram. A few months ago, I started seeing a spiritual director. It's not therapy, it's a friend or a confidant who helps you discern the movement of God's Spirit in your life. I highly recommend it. My spiritual director happens to be both a friend and a confidant. His name's Todd, and he's said to me before that whatever's upstream changes everything downstream. For us, that's our head and our mind and the way they shape our lives. For Abram, it was also a little more literal. The rivers may have bounded the land promised to him, but they extended far beyond its reach. The Euphrates flows more or less east-southeast from present-day Turkey into present-day Iraq, merging with the Tigris to form a new, shorter river that spills into the Persian Gulf. The Nile, for its part, flows from two different lakes, one in Ethiopia and another, Lake Victoria, that's shared by both Tanzania and Kenya. The White and Blue Niles flow north, forming the Nile there in Sudan and then flowing north through Egypt and into the Mediterranean Sea. This land, given to Abram, is fed by water carried from mountain lakes thousands of miles south and carries water thousands of miles to the east. What happens in this land is both a product of the path that the Nile took through all those lands to the south and a producer of what might happen to the lands and waters beyond the Euphrates to the east. From this land, all one needs to do is find the rivers at its edges, and you can get anywhere in the world you might want to go. These boundaries God establishes on Abram's inherited land offer access not only to some of the best land on earth, but the means to explore even more of creation if he or his descendants are willing and curious enough to see what's out there. Provision and opportunity. That's what these two rivers that come across as just simple lines on a map when we first read them offer Abram. That's what God gives Abram. Access to everything. The chance to have enough on which to live, even more, and more to explore. That's what God offers us as well. What sounds like a limited, finite gift ends up being a boundless opportunity. The second of many after Eden that we're told God gives to us if we're willing to trust that what God offers us is enough. For Abram, for you, for me, for us all. The rivers offer us more than enough.
God Knows Where is written, produced, and edited by me, Brett Harris, with music from Thomas Steinwinder and Michael Trest, and unwavering support from my wife, Elizabeth. If you like what you've heard from God Knows Where, leave us a rating or a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. It will help other folks find us here. You can also show your support for God Knows Where by visiting godknowswhere.supercast.com to subscribe to the show and get access to our seasonal series and study guides. Thanks for listening. Until next time, carry these words from William Sloane Coffin with you. May God give you the grace never to sell yourself short. Grace to risk something big for something good. Grace to remember that the world is too dangerous for anything but truth and too small for anything but love. So may God take your eyes and see through them, your minds and think through them, and your hearts and set them on fire.